If you currently have pain on the outside of your hip, and you've been told or diagnosed with something called gluteal tendinopathy or tendonitis, avoiding positions, activities that put compression on that tendon against the bone is incredibly important. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Dr. Zachary Wade here at Performance Sport and Spine in Seattle, Washington. In today's video, I'm going to go over the different postures and activities that you need to modify to let that tendon heal and stop irritating it throughout the day. With this condition, the pain is on the outside of the hip, but it also can go down your leg. It rarely passes your knee, and it can kind of go into the posterior buttock. And that pain is going to be worse like when you lay on the side, prolonged walking, standing up, or single leg loading activities like stairs. Now with this, there's three main goals of rehabbing gluteal tendinopathy. The first is to strengthen the tendon and the muscle. The second is to minimize postures and positions that irritate it throughout the day. And the last one is to improve biomechanics. This video will just address the posture and activity modifications. But if you want to overview this condition and the exercises, here's a video that you can click. And if you're having lots of pain and want to figure out ways to kind of reduce it or mitigate it, here's another video that we address 4 tips on how to reduce your pain. Also, in a couple of weeks, we're going to make a program that you can purchase online so you can have a tailored rehab program designed just for you and progress at your own pace. So back to this. So we have our model here, and this is your hip bone. And this is the bone outside of your hip called your greater trochanter. And I want you to think of this band here as your glute tendon, and it rides just on that bone. So you can kind of understand the anatomy. So to kind of help clarify this, I want you to think if this is the bone and this is the tendon. But a good example is I want you to think of the tendon as like a rope and the bone is like a rock. If your rope sits right here, the tendon, and it doesn't really push into it, it's not going to be bad. But if all day long that rope is kind of pushing into the rock, it starts to fray. So if you're doing things like sitting cross-legged or leaning into that hip or walking with a narrow stance, that rope or tendon is constantly rubbing against the bone or the rock. And you kind of imagine that it's fraying. Now think of this more conceptually. I want you to think of like your tendons is fraying apart, but it gets irritated and damaged. And if you're doing that throughout the day, nothing else that you're doing is going to help. So these modifications that I show you are really important to implement. Now we're going to talk about the postures and modifications that you should make. We are going to go more technical detail at the end of the video about why that tendon doesn't like excessive compression, but those are the basics for right now. So first, sitting. You're going to want to avoid sitting with your legs crossed or with your knees touching. These positions are going to put excessive compression on that tendon, especially if you do it for many hours or most of the day. It's better to sit in a chair with your feet shoulder width apart, equal weight on both feet. Also make sure that your hips are above your knee. If your knees are above your hip, that flexion of the hip can also put tension on the tendon. Next is standing. So 2 things you want to avoid, especially in early to middle phase, is standing or leaning into that hip where you put excessive stress into, like say my right hip, for example, or leaning into your hip where you hold onto a chair or wall and kind of lean into it. For standing, you want to have your feet shoulder width apart, weight on both foot evenly, and kind of soften these. Make sure your bones are holding you up, not your muscles. For sleeping or laying down, you want to avoid laying on the painful side. So say my right hip is the painful one, you want to avoid laying on it. Or let's say if my right hip is the painful side, if you lay on your left side and that leg falls too far over, it can also put compression. So lay on your side either way can be kind of problematic. A better solution is to lay on your back with your knees bent and a pillow underneath your knees, or lay on the good hip and put a pillow between your legs so that bad hip is spread apart so the knee is not falling in. Also, a gel mattress top can be huge. They're kind of expensive, but if night pain is your biggest problem, I highly suggest you try one and see. Next is stairs. Now, if stairs is really bothering you, you may want to just try to limit it at first, especially in the early phase. But when you're going upstairs, you want to make sure that you're supporting yourself with the arm rail, and that as you step up, your feet are shoulder width apart, and you use the opposite arm to brace so your pelvis doesn't kind of collapse in. So here we're going to show you what you should do. So you want to step up with the opposite arm and brace and keep your pelvis neutral. You don't want to brace with the other arm and let the hips kind of sink and your knee cave in, because that's going to put excessive compression on that, especially the repetitive loading of the steps. Next is walking. So some people are just really not going to tolerate walking. So if you try it, no matter what you do, it hurts. Just wait a few weeks until you do the rehab and then try it again. Others may find a baseline that they can go to, and then these tips can help. So the first tip, don't let your foot cross midline. When you're walking, make sure your feet stay shoulder width apart, or kind of think about walking like a cowboy. Bringing that leg in will repetitively irritate that tendon as you walk. Also, here's some great tips by this infographic by Allison Grimardi. So when you're walking, shorter stride lengths, so taking more steps for the same distance can help. That can reduce tendon compression. Also standing tall in the hip when you walk. So when you take Say take a step with your right foot. As you push your foot down, think tall in the hip. Try to think of that glute kind of rising up, and then also not letting your pelvis tilt. All these little things can really help, and some may help more than others, so focus on the ones that help the most. And then lastly, you need to avoid aggressive stretching. This is not tight muscles, this is about tendon generation, compression. Things like the pigeon stretch and foam rolling, that is gonna hurt a lot. I shouldn't really have to explain this. It's not gonna be helpful. And if you're doing this, nothing else you're gonna do is gonna be helpful. So again, avoid aggressive stretching early on. Now we're getting to more of the nitty gritty of why tendons don't like excessive compression. Now they can handle some, but every tissue has its limit. So the first thing is when there's excessive compression, that actually decreases your blood supply to that tendon. Now tendons already don't have a lot of blood supply, so this lowers their healing capacity and takes it longer to heal. The second thing is if it's an overuse thing, the collagen fibers, when they repair themselves, they actually don't make the same tissue. It's a little bit more water filled and it actually isn't as strong. The tendon will get bigger, but actually weaker. The third thing is tendons are better at tensile force or up and down than compression, and they really don't like both. So if it's already irritated and you're putting compression by like sitting into it and tension, those two combined are very painful. And the last thing is actually the nervous system and the parts of the tendon nerves. They get sensitized, kind of like inflammation, and so your pain maybe would be a 3, becomes a 7. Or there could be a combination of the 3, but that kind of gives you the more biological undertoning of what's causing this. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it helpful. We have a lot of other great videos on this topic if you want to check them out. If so, please like the video, subscribe to our channel,